It's Woodward and 11 mile. West of Rural.
Well, my name is Angie Johnson, and I'm 71 years of age. We moved to this area when I was about 9 years old, back 1951 or 52, something like that. Yeah. There was a house on each lot. There was a playground at the south end of the street. Just a nice working class mixed neighborhood. Kind of, I guess you could use the term melting pot, meaning a little bit of everything. Well, the north, this is where the jobs was back then. So my father was unemployed, so he left the south, Mississippi, to come to Michigan to get a job and make a home for his wife and children, get settled, and then he sent for us. So it was, the jobs was the issue. The factories in Detroit was really popping. Ford, Chrysler, Chevrolet, whatever. The factories was here. This is where the jobs was. And people migrated from south north in order to seek better employment, better educations for their children, better living. This is where they came. Okay, are you coming back soon?
Yeah.
I mean back through here.
Yeah, in a minute once I go get my clothes.
Okay, go get your stuff. I was in my 20s, and I remember I was young. I just felt like the world was coming to an end. To see soldiers in uniforms and riding through your neighborhood on a truck with guns, and there was they had a camp over on one of the at the schools, one of the high schools, where all these men was camped out, and then to see the burning. I mean, I was just, it was amazing, because I'd never seen anything like it. The most I've ever done was maybe, you read the history books the way things used to be, but to actually see that, for me, it was amazing. Just blew me right out of the water. I'd never seen that. Well, the city changed, of course. After the riots, there was all of the problem of jobs, and of course, there's always personalities. It was just a variety of reasons. I don't think it was just one thing that caused people to leave the city. It was the schools began to go down, property values, destructions. I mean, all kinds of things. It wasn't any one single reason people left the city. It was a variety of reasons. I was a single mother raising my children alone. I own property here in the city. I love this city and its people. So there's no reason for me to leave. Well, it was sad to see people move away because it just was not neighbors that moved away. I had family that moved away as well. So, of course, that's a little depressing, and you're a little unhappy about it. But then you don't allow life to stop you from living. It just makes you work harder to live. But you got to have pride in picking up the areas in which I've cleaned up around here. I didn't necessarily own them. I didn't necessarily have the tools to do it, or I couldn't afford to do it. But somehow or other, if you have pride, you make a way to do it. So for me, I had 2 small children to raise, but I cleaned up. I worked from 11 in the morning till 11 at night on my off day to cut the grass, to sweep the street, to paint the curb, to paint the tree, to do whatever. You have to make the people that run the government, so to speak, know, listen, we can't live like this. This is not how I want to live. I can do my part, but I need you to come over here. I don't have the money to get rid of that house. But not only do you have the equipment, you have the people. Let's do something. But you have to motivate people, to motivate somebody else, and motivate this one and that one. But you first got to show who you are and what you want to do. At least that's how I feel. So anybody that talks to me will tell you, I want it clean, I want the grass cut, believe me. And that's how it is. That's how, as long as I'm around, that's how it's going to be where I live. When I'm gone, well, hopefully I'll be going to a better place where I don't have to cut the grass. All I'll have to do is sing and dance and enjoy the gospel or whatever.
Word to the wife, tell them don't have that car open like that. This is the worst area.
It's often been said, you're the product of the area you live or whatever. And I don't necessarily believe that's true. Maybe partially. You are the product of the home in which you was raised in. I tried to have peace, love, respect, compassion, those kind of things in my home. Regardless of what happens in the street, you have to keep those things in your home. And you have to mold your children to be that way. And in spite of what was around me, I think I have some very good children and grandchildren and great-grandchildren. Not perfect, because nobody is. It's very diverse. You have all kinds of people, all age, color, creeds, sex, every national, everything. And the young people coming in now are beginning to build something. They're restoring some of the older buildings, which is a good thing. And then if they restore the buildings rather than tear the buildings down, then that means there won't be vacant property. Hope to see someday these vacant lots or the flower gardens and the vegetable gardens, that they will be replaced with houses and garages. And because a garden cannot pay taxes, but if there's a home there and a family living there, they can. And that's what you need, is somebody on this property to pay some taxes. So I would hope it would build up at some point the way it used to be. I would love to see that. That if you want things to change, you can't sit around and wait for the other guy. You gotta get up, get motivated, and do something yourself. And generally, if people see you out here doing things to make it better and make it nice, usually someone will get up and join you.
Let's see. Where's the baby one? These are the bell peppers. There are sweet peppers also behind them, like this one right here. You guys are gonna take all this stuff with you. And cherries and garden peaches. And green zebra. Beautiful. More arugula. Swiss chard. Should probably take some of this stuff, actually. This is just like a place that people can come if you have money, right? It's no different than like American people who go to Mexico and say, oh, I can go to Mexico and live like a king, like off of such and such amount of money. Detroit is like exactly the same thing right now. You know, you can just come here, you can buy like a whole block of land and do whatever you want to do with it, you know, because they're just giving stuff away. And beyond giving stuff away, they are actually like letting businesses come here and not pay any taxes just because they're so desperate. You know, desperate to create jobs for the citizens and desperate to create revenue, you know, for themselves. When it all, to me, you occupy yourself, you're not concerned with any of that. I don't care what they do downtown. I don't care what they do in Washington or anywhere else, you know, because this is all I care about over here. Yeah, these are heirloom tomatoes up here. We got these from the greening of Detroit. I think the big thing about me and the greening is that I intended to, you know, do this before I knew about the greening, you know. And most people, they'll learn about the greening and then do it. So they'll be doing it based on what the greening can give them, you know. But, you know, most of the stuff planted here, you know, we got ourselves. Well, outside of, you know, find something to do, which is really what it means, find something to do with yourself, for yourself, we try to create a division between the other Occupy movements and Occupy Yourself, because those movements are more so like, they're just not serious in my opinion. They're like asking, I mean, the people understand that they're being abused, right? But they're asking pretty much not to be abused so much, as opposed to, I don't want to be abused at all, which is like the stance that we've taken over here. We say, we don't want the things you have to offer, we'll do it ourselves. the other Occupy movements, the other Occupy movements say, you know, we want to negotiate with you, or we just want some sort of relief, and that's not what we're asking for. We're not asking for anything. We just want to occupy ourselves. Well, it's always been a park. The lady who stays right here in this house next to the park, she's lived there for 32 years, and she says it was a park when she moved here. It belongs to the city of Detroit, and since the city of Detroit is in such dire straits, like last year the grass was taller than this fence. Like, you wouldn't believe it, over the whole park, because the city either can't afford or isn't required to maintain areas like this. So they adopt, you know, lots out and parks and stuff to hopefully that citizens will maintain them, you know. But really, you don't have to get it adopted to you. You can just like do it, you know, just because Detroit, the regulation in Detroit is very minimal, you know, because that's just the way Detroit is. What I want to see is for the residents of Detroit to stop working for the city, stop working for Ford, stop working for McDonald's, and to start growing food, because food will always sell. It is always in demand. Everyone has to eat. There's so much land here that, like, if we just pulled together, the city would not be the way that it is. There would not be emergency managers running back and forth in here. We could govern ourselves. But there are entities that do not want to see that happen. And even if there weren't entities that didn't want to see that happen, the mentality of the average person around here is not going to do this, because we ask many people who live on this street or that we just meet. We tell them we'll pay you $10 an hour, come over here to help us. And you still see it's just me and Fred, wherever he's at. I don't feel like the people who live here are being encouraged to farm urbanly. I feel like there are foreign people coming in who are farming urbanly. A lot of these local stores and restaurants and stuff will just buy stuff from you, maybe not necessarily for their restaurant, but for themselves. And, you know, just people in the community, we kind of have like a community drop-off thing where we accept donations. But as far as like commercial, retail, capitalist business, Eastern Market, there are several markets around the city, right? But there is enormous demand for food in Detroit. But as far as the farm is concerned, I'd like it to be functioning, like fully functioning, the entire farm, forever, pretty much, forever. And I'd like people to come here, young people especially, like kids maybe like 11, 12, come here, learn how to do this, and go somewhere else and do it for themselves, and then teach someone else to do it, you know. I don't know how that'll work, but that is my goal. Our goal here is not to make money. It is to like improve our community, you know, so that we don't have to be afraid of each other when, you know, we're walking down the street and things like that. There you can see right here, that is all squirrel. They've been nibbling. And like, they've been nibbling.
My name is Derek Weaver. My background is actually in real estate. I don't know if I told you guys this, but that's what I do is real estate, like management, and then a big passion of mine is revitalization. So the whole idea of the project is to use it as a tool to revitalize this horrible neighborhood in Detroit that is really, probably one of the, or been identified as one of the worst. Actually, I want to show you this right here. Look out the window. See that? Look at that.
Wow.
That's the largest graffiti mural in Michigan. Have you seen that yet?
No, I think it was.
But anyway, so my background is in real estate, and I came up with this idea to do this whole graffiti project because a lot of the buildings in the area are abandoned, vacant, and just in really bad condition. So, I guess the solution to changing the area is doing something different, and I figured, doing these graffiti murals and just bringing color into the neighborhood would be something different. A lot of the people that live in the neighborhood, work in the neighborhood, have been really supportive of it and are enjoying it. It's bringing people that normally don't come to that neighborhood to come to the neighborhood and kind of turning it into a tourist attraction. What's interesting about this neighborhood and why I guess I was kind of inspired to do this project is a couple big news media, I guess, companies came out with an article about a year and a half ago. I think one of them was CNN and Forbes magazine. They did this thing where they identified 15 of the cheapest, poorest, and highest crime neighborhoods in the entire United States. And this particular neighborhood where the project is taking place was on the list. And I read that article, and I never felt that it was an unsafe neighborhood or was as bad as they portrayed it to be. But I said, hey, basically it stuck in the back of my mind for a few months, and one day I was like, hey, I got to do something about this. So we have to change the way that people look at this area. They look at it as this horrible place. So let's change it, and that's kind of what this project is about, is changing the way that people view the neighborhood. Because normally you just drive up and down the street and see all these burned down, falling down buildings and no one in the neighborhood, the grass growing up through the sidewalk. But now it's starting to look a little bit different. And it was actually interesting. I went to the Tigers game last night, and I met a gentleman there that grew up in that neighborhood. And, as a kid, he grew up there and was in that neighborhood to, I think he was like 18 years old. And he said he drove through that neighborhood with his son a couple weeks ago, and he basically said, there's something going on in this neighborhood. I don't know what it is. He really couldn't pinpoint it. But then when I met him last night, I was kind of just telling him about this project, and he's like, oh my gosh, I was just driving through that neighborhood, and that's what it is. That's what it is. I guess what makes Detroit attractive to a lot of young people is the cost of living is so low compared to, just for example, if you're like a young professional that's making $45,000 a year in Detroit, you may only have to pay $600 or $700 a month to live, but you can go and make $45,000 a year in New York and pay $1,500 for a place to live. So I definitely see that may be one challenge in the years to come, is the cost of living may start rising. But it's still going to be cheaper than Chicago. It's going to still be cheaper than New York or Miami or any type of, LA, any type of big urban city. I think that Detroit for a long time will be, an urban city where it's always, I guess, inexpensive to live. I mean, you can go and buy a home, a nice loft or a house in Metro Detroit for $50,000 or $60,000. That same square footage in another city may be $300,000 or $400,000, and you have to work another 10 or 15 years in your career to be able to afford that. So the opportunity is, if you're, let's say you're 25 years old and you can buy a condo for $50,000 or $60,000, you can have that paid off by the time you're 40 years old and not have a mortgage. And most 40-year-olds in the United States have mortgages and that type of debt. But we're pulling up to this graffiti mural. This graffiti mural up here is done, and it's still being worked on by a guy named Kobe Solomon, and he's been part of our project at the Grand River Creative Corridor. And he started this mural actually last year and ran out of money, and he did this fundraiser and raised over $10,000 just through the fundraiser, and he's able to finish the mural now. And once it's completed, it'll be the largest graffiti mural in Michigan. And we're gonna pull up to it right now. And this is actually, have you guys been through here? This is the Russell Industrial Center. This used to be a car manufacturing facility, and it closed down a while ago, and I think back in 2000 or somewhere around there, they converted it to artist space. So I'm gonna give you guys like a little tour through this. There's tons of artists. It's in kind of really bad condition. But look at this. People normally associate graffiti with bad, just like they've associated this this neighborhood as bad. So what do? Let's change the way people look at the neighborhood and change the way people look at graffiti. A lot of people don't recognize graffiti as a form of art. They just think it's vandalism, crime, gangs, criminals are involved in it. So, I mean, some of the graffiti artists that have been involved in the project have been to jail for doing graffiti, but I think given the right opportunity and given the permission to do a wall, that they can create a masterpiece, and I think there's something really to be said about it. So we're not only changing the way people view the neighborhood, it's changing the way that the general public views graffiti. So, I mean, I want to say 95% of the people that I've spoken to love it. But there's always that small percentage, maybe 5%, that don't like it and don't understand it. But that's expected with anything. I mean, anytime you try to implement change, there's always going to be people that don't want to change. But guess what? Too bad. So, they'll come around. And on this half-mile stretch of Grand River, there's one building that doesn't want us to do graffiti on it, but I know that the guy's going to eventually come around. So, I mean, there are a couple operating businesses in the neighborhood, and one of them has been there since 1943 for over 70 years, and his dad built the business, built the building, and they've seen the neighborhood at its best, and then they've just seen it progressively go downhill. So it's real exciting for people to see some type of change. So I mean, if you want things to be different, you have to start somewhere, and I think that's what this project is about.
this plant closed in 1955. From 1955 to about 1980, it's broken into, there's a supermarket, there's like a Hudson's, a King's department store. It gets divided into a lot of different factories, smaller factories. And then eventually the mayor says, I'm gonna tear it down. So he pushes everybody out, and after that point it starts becoming a place for rave parties, which you all know about, right? Or you heard about. You might even be younger than rave parties. I don't know.
My name is Rich Feldman. I'm 63 years old. I don't have a profession. What I do is a tremendous amount of community, political, visionary organizing. I have spent the last 40 years working with James and Grace Lee Boggs, and I also work as a UAW member in Detroit.
And Jimmy sees the two things happening in the late 50s. One, some 70 new plants are being built around the country. All the work that was once in Detroit is now moving to the suburbs and to the south. And he sees robots coming in. He sees automation coming in. And he says, for the first time in human history, people will no longer be needed to work as we know it. Detroit, as your little map shows, and this is the story everybody tells, is the size of Boston, San Francisco, and Manhattan combined, with a little left over. It's about 145, 150 square miles. Okay, almost 1/3 of that is now vacant land, abandoned land, and open. Okay? Which puts Detroit in a very unique space, in a unique moment. It was once the 4th or 5th largest city, and now just continues to decline in numbers. The founding, so Diego Rivera's mural has a very small picture of a car. And the way that we like to talk, we want to share the story is that the 20th century starts out as people becoming producers, and you're defined as economic men and women from the beginning of that epoch as producers around manufacturing. By the end of the 20th century, you're defined as consumers. But I come here because, does anybody know where we are?
The Volt plant?
The Volt plant. That excites you? Yeah, why does it excite you? Tell me why it excites you, brother.
I think it's awesome.
Why?
Because it's like our first electric car that's meant for the mainstream.
Okay.
It's still rather expensive, but
Okay. All right, so it's exciting. Electric cars are exciting because it'll get us off of the fossil fuel that built that other way of life, right? What's the purpose of your lives? Right? That's a different question that we have to find a way to get on the agenda. What is the purpose of an economy? Is it to create work that means something to the community? What's the purpose of technology?
The Boggs Center was created after James Boggs died in 1993. The building was bought by friends. Grace and Jimmy had lived on the first floor, so we bought the whole building. And it's become a place to keep the ideas and struggles and conversations and practice and dialogue and writings of Jimmy and Grace Boggs alive, and also to become a safe place for every new generation of activists to ask questions about their thinking, their philosophy, their ideology, their practice. So it's become a place where we have conversations on freedom schooling, where we have conversations on new work, where we have conversations on creating peace zones for life, arts and activism, and the questions of what does it mean to be a human being, and how do we continue the revolutionary tradition, revolutionary thought that's so necessary for this time in human history.
That's the complication.
Right,
One of their complications.
one of the
right?
complications.
So I told them they can go to Cuba where it's free, but they decided to go to U of M. What's that?
And then we have to live more simply so other people can simply live. That we learned from Martin Luther King's last few years of writings that we have to struggle against racism, materialism, and militarism. and that we have to define ourselves as new citizens rather than as producers or consumers. And so my hope for the rest of the world is that they see that that's the struggle we're going through in Detroit, as are people in Egypt, in Greece, in Tunisia, and all over the world as we enter this continue this moment of struggle when the planet is facing its limitations. So we can't evade these questions anymore, and Detroit knows that, and I guess the motto of Detroit, because it's such a city influenced by the ideas and people who came from the South, particularly African Americans, the phrase was always, how do you make a way out of no way? And the people of Detroit have made a way out of no way as they've created 1,600 community gardens, new concepts and new practices for community-based, place-based education, and so forth. Detroit uniqueness is that it was the example of the success of the economic American dream for working class people as well as middle class people because of the auto industry and the high level of the industrial age that we reached here. It's also unique because it's a movement city. It's where the labor movement started and people struggled for the dignity of workers, where the civil rights and black power movement emerged and moved to higher levels of political debate, where we had an important black mayor elected who then had to face the new contradictions of the changing capitalism and the flight of capital and the changing role of cities. So Detroit is unique because there's been intergenerational dialogue and a continuity since the 60s in particular, but earlier, so that generations have been able to continue to ask questions on this journey of how do we change ourselves and change the world. So I come here as a way to say, you are very lucky to live at this point in history. There's going to be unbelievable pain, but there's also going to be unbelievable opportunity. And the deeper we understand that we're at a changing epoch in human history, will be the way that we'll understand not just how we change our own country or our own community, but understand the impact we'll have on this change. Okay, so I come here because we're the end of an epoch in history. We'll walk over that way and I'm going to tell you more about this place in Detroit.
Hi, I'm Katie. I'm 28 years old. I'm a working artist, and I am the director of North End Studios. I work in community, and I'm a painter, photographer. Yeah. Okay, so North End Studios, we're a group of artists, a collective of artists that originally started on the Boulevard in Detroit, East Grand Boulevard, and from there we've now moved over here to like Lorraine Street, and we offer affordable studio space for artists and membership for artists, opportunities, gallery space, musical performance opportunities, things like that. I moved to Detroit because I ran away from home. Basically, I didn't want to live with my mom anymore, and I wanted to be an artist. Like, I wanted to just live my life and like not live in the suburbs. Like, I'm from Michigan, you know, so like there's this whole dynamic of like the suburbs and the city and like, you know, like boundaries. And so for me, it was like a rebellion in a lot of ways. A lot of freedom, I think, in the city. Like, there's a sense of lawlessness in a way. So there's opportunity for artists to experiment and kind of go outside of like what they might consider to be like even comfortable in their own work, you know, so you can take a lot of risks here. And I think that, you know, because there's not really an economic, you know, like capital here for art, that gives you a lot of freedom as well, because it allows you to just make art for like the sake of it and to do it and because you know, want to, or because it relates to other people that are in that same sort of, you know, like realm of thinking or wave or whatever. And just engaging like a lot of those youth in like splash painting, which is a style of painting that I came up with for youth engagement, where like anybody, you know, we do like 1 or 2 workshops to go over it, but anybody can really splash paint, you know, so it's really fun. Like even if you're not an artist kid or into art, you can still like kind of, well, it's like, you know, we paint, like we wash a wall out with a fade and then like fill bottles up and just splash paint and roll paint up, that sort of stuff too. It's like youth engaged, like young people participate and then they see their work, you know, their hands in their surroundings. They see themselves in their surroundings, and that's like a really powerful thing, and I'm into. And just like trying to find locations and sites that can really like stand out in this sort of post-industrial like environment. I mean, I think like art in general can do so many different things. I mean, it spans across like tons of different realms of thinking and, you know, like ways of accomplishing like things and communicating and representing culture. And, you know, so ultimately like my favorite type of work is art that is encompassing like existing culture and sort of like, I guess just like visually communicates to the fullest extent of like that North End Studios, where we're specifically focusing on like artist community and creating our own like economy within a space and utilizing an abandoned space, a space that was vacant, that no one, you know, was in or whatever too, and like trying to do something different with it to like boost our own like sense of who we are too, and like live out our dreams or do what we want with the space. Our last space, we were in there, we took over the building, fixed it all up, made it awesome, had all these events, made it super popular, and then somebody came and bought it, you know, like, and gentrified us. And then we're homeless, and we're the ones who even, they straight up told me, like, we knew about this because of the work you were doing, you know? So it's like, okay, well, like stuff like that, like we have an affordable studio here, but then like what happens once this place is like known and we're popular again, and then they can just raise the rent on us, like, you know. So I think it's just like dealing with like concepts and trying to figure out like where you can move them and like how you can work your art and just stay underground as much as possible. Sponsored by like Chase Bank last summer to do 2 murals in the North End with like 12 other artists, but then it's like, okay, but then it's like Chase Bank, you know, and then you're like, well, wait, like where's my morality stand in that? Like it's kind of like, well, they are supporting like this great youth work and these paintings to happen, but like, is it for like, you know, their motivations, or where is it? So I think you got to find like some sort of like line where like can feel okay with like what, you know, like you still do have to like, you know, sort of interact with space and things too, but it's really hard too, because it's kind of like you can get involved in something and think it's the right thing, and like a lot of people do, they think they're doing the right thing and that, oh, this is making the city better, but in reality it could just be like for these people to like profit off of like, you know, these redevelopment opportunities that are just, you know, lining their pockets and everyone else is still hungry. And I mean, it's like they're trying to change the way things are. I'm more along the lines of embracing the way things are and just like living and existing amongst everyone is, you know, like this is where I'm from and I love this place. Like pretty much grew up like in the middle of a race riot and like all these like dynamics, you know, like I'm really intrigued by that as an artist and like as a person that just lives here too. And I think a lot of people see the city right now, like all these opportunities and, oh, you know, you can get in on this, and they think they're like doing the right thing. Like that's like they've convinced themselves that like, oh, well, gentrify, you know, like making this better, right, or whatever. But it necessarily doesn't make anything better, you know, it just actually causes more conflict amongst like the existing cultures, existing people. You know, a lot of people in the city like live and deal with poverty on a daily basis, whether you're like personally it's in your life or you see it every day, you know. Hope for the city. I guess like, yeah, I just like to see all my people not have to struggle as much anymore. That'd be really cool. And everybody to just like live good quality healthy lives and be able to do it affordably and not have to leave, and just like that I don't know, I guess I'm kind of like nostalgic in a way, like I want to hold on to a lot, but life's just very fleeting and it's like changes, you know, all the time, constantly. But I'd like to just see all my friends and like people that I love here like be able to do what they love and be successful and be happy and still be able to live here, and you know, like and that things don't just turn into the suburbs. That's my hope. I love Detroit's eclecticness, authentic, grimy, gritty, like the, you know, world's falling down around you complex going on. Like I love that aspect, and I grew up in the suburbs and I just would hate for it to, you know, like if Detroit turns into the suburbs, I'm not staying here. Like I'm out because I can't deal, like I love that whole like fall of, because to me it's the truth. Like you go out to the suburbs and it's just like this facade, it's a lie. Like the same problems are there, same issues, same systematic issues, government, you know, American issues, whatever, like oppression, same things going on, like, you know. But Detroit to me is like the truth, you know. It's like at least it doesn't lie to you, you know. Like you can see the signs of that, like when you look at buildings being scrapped, or when you look at like people on the street or whatever. It's like very real to like what the real problems are in this country and in the city itself. So I just would like that truth to remain, I guess. But there's a lot of people trying to, you know, live a lie, and that sucks. But I hate to end it on living a lie, but you know what I'm talking about, like that whole like, hey, and it's that capitalistic mentality that, you know, like that's being so pushed by our own system here in America. And it's like, okay, well that capitalistic mentality, like we can fight back against that too with like the same weapons that they use against us, and we will. And like people want to look at me like, oh, well, I'm like some sort of like rebel or something, like whatever. No, I'm just like fighting for like what I love and what I care about, and like the right things to happen for people, not just the things that like benefit certain people or a certain group or whatever, you know. I mean, but ultimately Detroit is an awesome place to come and paint, so come and paint here.
Drowning in the sea of love. Let me tell you all. I've been out here so very long. I'm lost on my direction.
Hey, I'm DJ Sicari, Starfleet analog soul technician, if you see right here on this little shirt that I designed for myself. Wow, I'm 37 years old. I've been a hip hop fan all my life. So, you know, hip hop is something that I live. Right now, I currently am the proprietor of a hip hop art gallery here in Detroit. It is the home of, you know, Detroit, you know, hip hop artistic expression, merging visual art and live music performance. We embrace all elements of hip hop, and the reason we say 5 elements is we include knowledge. We think that knowledge is an element in hip hop that you have to have, especially if you want to master any of the other 4 basic elements. You have to know everything about, you know the techniques. You have to know exactly that. So I include knowledge as an all-encompassing 5th element, and so we call ourselves 5E Gallery. It was really hard in Detroit to find places that would embrace, you know, local Detroit hip hop. I found it necessary to open my own space. I said, hey, why don't I just stop going around and trying to convince all these bars and clubs to actually embrace this music that people love all around the world, you know, and play it, and I'll just open my own space that values that. And so, in 2007, we found a little spot, you know, in Corktown, and it was an abandoned liquor store. Had been not abandoned, it was owned. It had been closed for about maybe 15 years. It's been a long time. And you know, I got with a couple of people and we renovated it, and we put a gallery in the space. Decided to open a gallery instead of another bar or another club, so that way I can do community work as well, and you know, help build bridges in the arts and the music communities. They used to be very separate, you know, and so had the graph artists come and, you know, do giant murals on the wall. Some of them are still there. That spot is actually right down the street. And, you know, it just kind of brought a lot of diversity and a lot of attention to this area, you know, as Detroit was going through the big, you know, real estate crisis, low economy here. So, you know, it was just something positive for people to do and something great. We got a great reception from the community. A lot of people came. And so, as that spot gained popularity, I didn't own the spot. I was just leasing the spot. And, you know, people wanted to buy it. And more people came to buy it, and it got out of my price range to keep it. You know, it actually sold for about $250,000 at a time when there were no buildings around here that were at that. It was at that time when, like, you could buy a house for $5,000. You know what I'm saying? Like, so that much popularity for that spot. And so we actually found the spot that we're in today, which is only 5 blocks away, and we bought this spot for $80,000 to show you the difference in the scale. Everything I do, I have to have diverse movements. You know, it's got to be diverse. So my hope for the city would be that the people here wouldn't abandon the city, thinking that, oh, it's all abandoned and the buildings are nothing, it looks like a war zone, and that's the propaganda that's out about Detroit. My hope for the city would be that the people here would recognize its value and invest themselves in helping to build the city up as the city is building. You know what I'm saying? The city is it's hit rock bottom, can't go any further. The pendulum swings both ways, it's starting to swing backwards, and you know, I hope that the people that are here would actually value that and help to build the city up. Take an old building and restore it and give it a purpose that's greater than just being another building. You know what I'm saying? But
hard to be proud of, but you can't rep your damn hood if you ain't even repping
Good or bad is relative. Like in my opinion, I could say this is good and this is bad and this is good, but at the end of the day, it's just my opinion. I will say that change is necessary, and it is happening. And I love the spotlight on artistic creativity right now. Like I love pop-up outdoor galleries, and I love how I see burners, I see pieces everywhere. I'm like, oh man, there's another piece. Oh wow, there's another piece. Oh wow, there's another piece. And people from, you know, around the country are coming in and doing pieces, and people from, I love it. I love to see that. But I also know that usually or historically when that happens, that is happening as early re-gentrification efforts. So it can be a bittersweet. It can be like, yeah, they made the place cool, and then, you know, people come in and buy up all the place and run all the people in the community out. You know, raise property values, running people out. Those things, you know, it happens. So it's just, it's a bittersweet.
People come together for time of need. If your heads together, I know defeat.
How long has the center been around? The Grace
How long have I been in this house? I've been in this house since 1962. What Bunyan understood is that we need to have images of the future in order to be challenged. That we should, just as people are challenged to go to the moon, we have thought of technological challenges. We are all living at a time when we are challenged to create a whole new society. And that faces all of us. The Declaration of Independence says that it is our inalienable right to life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, and that governments are instituted to serve those ends. And that whenever any government is destructive of these ends, it is our right and our duty to alter or abolish such government, and to create such forms as to us to seem most likely to affect our safety and happiness. And that's the time that you are living in, and I am living in at this time on the clock of the world. And it's a fantastic time to be alive. I hope all of you think that way. As you look around you and you see that the packet plant, that era is over, and that we're creating a post-industrial society. And that a post-industrial society is a society that has a different relationship to the earth, a different relationship between people, and that we are at the threshold of creating that. That's an enormous privilege. And that's what citizenship is all about. And that's what Obama said. It's about you and not about me.
All right.